Hi and welcome to the lesson. In our last lesson, we talked about how HTML is actually a markup language rather than a programming language, and that we actually need the power of a programming language like JavaScript to accomplish some of our more complex features. So in this lesson, we'll talk a little bit about some of JavaScript's fundamental syntax. So here we're looking at a JavaScript program similar to the one we saw near the end of last week. On line 7, we have something called a script tag. It looks like an HTML tag, but it will not be displayed to users. So it starts with the word script. It has a type, which is text/JavaScript. The script tag is closed, and then there's a matching script tag after at the bottom with the traditional slash before the script. And you see here in my editor that it shows matching script tags beginning and end. Anything between the script tags is considered to be JavaScript rather than HTML. So your browser will evaluate this as JavaScript programming code rather than HTML code. So whenever we use JavaScript, especially JavaScript of any length, we will need to use script tags. The exception to this is, as we saw in the previous video, if we have an on-click event here or some other event, we can give a snippet of JavaScript here without the tag. So when we're using it for an event, like in this case, we can do so without the tags. But normally we'll need the script tags to do JavaScript, particularly JavaScript of any particular length. So let's talk about some of the other elements of syntax here. One is that this symbol that I've just highlighted, the equal sign, is JavaScript's assignment operator. So what this says when we read it is that we're assigning this text, thanks for adding text, to the inner HTML. So it's similar to how we might have experienced it in math when we're trying to say x equals 5, but in this case, we're not stating it, we're giving this value on the right to the thing on the left. Another element here that you'll want to be aware of are these dots. So I'm going to read this as document.getElementById, and then there's an ID here, dot inner HTML. And we use this dot to separate aspects of what are called JavaScript objects. Now we won't go in detail about the objects themselves, but get used to seeing this dot notation and this so-called dot operator when we're writing JavaScript code. Another element that I want to discuss is that JavaScript is case sensitive. So, for instance, add paragraph text is one function name. If I were to do this and capitalize the A, that is considered a different name altogether. So the same thing goes here. If I were to change getElementById to getElementById with a capitalized E after the G, this would no longer be recognized as the feature I want from JavaScript. So we need to get the case correct. Okay, so let's look at this example. And this is a review from before. Okay, I've opened it in my browser, and we'll click the button and we'll see the text. And let's go review that again briefly. This is the button we clicked. It had the text click me. It accessed this function, add paragraph text, and it finds the function here defined with the keyword function. And the only thing this function is doing is using getElementById and assigning the inner HTML this value. Now, you may remember that the element it was looking for is the element here on line 26 with the ID name para, and this ID name could be anything you like. I chose para because it's a paragraph. And then if we want to change the HTML of the element, like we do in this paragraph tag, we can use .innerHTML, that's the HTML inside of the paragraph tag, and we give it this new value. So the last thing I want to mention as far as syntax in JavaScript, for this lesson is that JavaScript statements, that is one line of code, are terminated with a semicolon, and that's this character right here. Without that, some JavaScript statements will not execute correctly. So it's a good practice to use the semicolon at the end of statements. There are some occasional exceptions. For instance, this function doesn't have a semicolon here or here. And after practicing for a while, you'll get used of these little details. So in our next lesson, we'll continue talking about JavaScript syntax, and I'll see you then.